Well, it's the first day of hurricane season, and right off the bat, we have the second named storm of the year. I'm certified meteorologist Jonathan Kegas, and in this video, we are going to talk about Tropical Depression 2, officially designated on the first day of hurricane season. And then we're going to talk about what happened to number one and why we started with Tropical Depression 2 versus number one. And then we'll talk about briefly about the outlook from the Hurricane Center on what they expect for the 2023 hurricane season. Before we get into the video, again, we are now in hurricane season. If you want to stay updated on all things tropical weather, you have to hit subscribe. Please do that. And if you find this content interesting, please consider hitting that thumbs up button. It really does help us out a lot. All right, so here is the latest on Tropical Depression 2, hot off the press, June 1st. With the 5 o'clock advisory, hurricane hunters have been in this thing all afternoon and have determined that the circulation has closed, that there are enough thunderstorm activity right around the center to make this indeed tropical. They found wind speeds of 35 miles an hour, again, just below tropical storm status. Now, it is expected to either late Thursday night or early on the 2nd. You see that tropical storm icon to intensify into a tropical storm. If it does do that, it would be named Arlene. Again, it's the second depression, first named storm. It's really weird. Stick around. We'll get all into that. By Friday afternoon, June 2nd, still a 40-mile-per-hour storm. But then you see it here as it kind of drifts to the south, kind of an odd direction here through the Gulf of Mexico. Normally, they're going the other way. But it's not going to have a very long life. The environment is very hostile. The wind shear is going to crank up. There's a lot of dry air into the central and southern Gulf of Mexico, which is really going to have it die a very quick death. So that is a good thing. Again, right off the bat here, this is really not going to impact land. That is impacting Florida indirectly by increasing its moisture across the peninsula to help daily thunderstorms get going. But other than that, thankfully, this is going to be a real non-issue unless you're a boater, unless you're working the shipping channels out here in the Gulf of Mexico. All right, so there is the satellite again. Wind speeds 35 miles an hour. No gusts being reported with this thing. Again, it really isn't that impressive. The brighter the colors on the infrared satellite map would indicate intense thunderstorm activity. We just aren't seeing that. Now, as the sun goes down on the 1st and into the 2nd, we're going to get into that diurnal minimum, as we call it. We typically do see a flare-up as instability goes in tropical meteorology anyway with the tropics. So we'll see if it can try to fire up more storms around its center. But most of the activity, again, is north and east of the center. But again, hurricane hunters have found a well enough anyway defined center to classify this as tropical. I have some of the streamlines here embedded on the visible satellite, so you can kind of see where that spin is. Right down here, we do have some blossoming thunderstorms, again, mainly on the north and northeast side of this center. Again, enough to be tropical, but most of the inclement weather, if you will, is hanging off on the northeast side. We'll get into some modeling in just a bit. The spaghetti plots, the infamous spaghetti plots are back. I'll show you those in just 1 second, but I want to briefly show you again why this is not going to last long at all. And again, I wish and it's my hope that they all kind of behave like this year. Again, there's some of the moisture in the blue and white indicated by some of the thunderstorms and some of the showers that are ongoing. This brown color here undercutting the southern and western side of the storm, that is all the dry air that as this kind of drifts off to the south, it is going to be sucking it all in. Tropical features, again, disturbances, depressions, hurricanes, tropical storms, what have you, do not like to be disturbed by dry air. So again, that's one of the reasons. There's also some very, very strong wind shear, and that's evident again by some of these thunderstorms kind of being blown off to the west. You can really see that as you move further to the south. You see that cutting across South Florida and over the Bahamas. And again, so while we have that drier air pushing in, we also are going to have any kind of thunderstorms that tried to get developed to be kind of cut off. And again, that's not good news for tropical systems. Good news for us. Here again are the computer models here for Tropical Depression 2. And again, as it drifts to the south over the next few days and really as it enters the weekend, the environment down here is not very conducive to tropical systems. So that is good. Certainly some rain coming to North Cuba, maybe getting into parts of the Turks and Caicos, Jamaica, Cayman Islands, I should say, which are down here. again, because the wind shear is going to kind of blow those thunderstorms off, but it's not going to be anything crazy. And then it's going to work its way back and send some moisture toward the Florida Keys, toward Miami, toward South Florida, and then toward the Bahamas. Again, not expected to intensify or materialize any further. All right, before we wrap this up, I mentioned about we're going to talk about, again, the season. This was NOAA's outlook from late May for the season. They are going to have another outlook kind of once we get to the peak of hurricane season, right before we get into the peak, coming out in August. But as it stands now, 12 to 17 named storms, 5 to 9 of those becoming hurricanes, and then 1 to 4 of those becoming major hurricanes. That's going to be Category 3 and above. There's, I think, a great deal of uncertainty, more than typical uncertainty. Of course, when you're forecasting months and months in advance, there's always going to be uncertainty. Okay, we don't have it down to an exact number. There's higher than normal uncertainty because we do have an El Nino, and that is typically the great hurricane deterrent. It increases wind shear in the Atlantic. We just talked about that hurricanes don't like wind shear. So it helps to kind of keep those thunderstorms at bay. Again, more often than not, especially in the Gulf and the Caribbean. But the Atlantic right now is also juiced. The water temperatures are way above normal. They're forecast to stay that way through the peak of hurricane season. And of course, we all know it. That is the fuel for these storms. So you have the limiting factor in El Nino. You have the jet fuel that is the warm Atlantic kind of battling it out. And we're going to see, and that's going to be one of the most interesting things to watch this hurricane season, is the battle between a very warm Atlantic to fuel these storms and then the potentially moderate to strong El Nino developing by the peak of hurricane season as well. So that is going to be the main battle to watch as to how this season plays out. Again, so typically, we're at least looking for an average season. The one thing that I want to stress, though, is that it only takes one. Hurricane Andrew, 1992. That was a very quiet season. Again, the A storm didn't come around to August. That was an El Nino year. And you see what happened. So again, I end with that to say that now is the time to be prepared. Tropical Depression 2 developing is a good time to remind yourself to get your kits ready, to just be prepared. It takes a whole lot of stress out of the equation if you have a lot of that prep work done early on prior to the season starting. Alrighty, guys, of course, this is the place to stay updated on all things tropical weather as we move forward this hurricane season. I'm certified meteorologist Jonathan Kagas, and if you do like this kind of stuff, you come to the right place. Again, please hit that thumbs up button if you found this content helpful, and please hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you along for the ride as we talk tropical meteorology for the 2023 hurricane season that officially got underway June 1st. And got started with a bang with the development of Tropical Depression 2. We'll catch you next time, guys. I can't talk tonight. We'll catch you next time, guys. See you soon.